Hello, friends. This is Adrienne with Spanish by the Book, and today I'm going to share with you something a little special. I'm going to share with you what a masterclass will look like when we do our masterclasses in our membership program this fall. So I'm choosing a wonderful book, a lovely book in the category of what I call a little book, not just because it's an actual small board book, but because it teaches just one language structure. It has just 15 or 16 vocabulary words, very concrete nouns that you can see and touch and easily understand. So I thought for our learning time, so you could get the feel for how we're going to work together in the future, I thought this would be a great little book to use. The name of the book is Te Amo Sol, Te Amo Luna, or in English, I Love You Sun, I Love You Moon. The author of the book is Karen Pandell, and the illustrator is the very famous, very, very creative and prolific Tommy De Paula. The concept of the book is it's not an Earth Day book, but it's about loving the earth and loving the things on our planet. So if you wanted to say Earth Day, you'd say Dia de la Tierra, and that might be a good time that you would share this book. But I really read this all year long. Okay, so before we get started, before I share anything in this book, I want to kind of do a little pre-test. And I'd love for you to look at the images and say to yourself, do I know how to say, and check and double check. It's always wonderful to see the transformation that you're going to make, because the idea of our language learning program is that by sharing bilingual books in your learning community, you can lift the language out of the book and into your speaking vocabulary. So we're checking ourselves first. Do you know those words? Are you able to say those words? Are you able to describe them and talk about them and say where you see them? I bet you'll be able to do this when we're done. Okay, the first thing you need to know is that we're going to use Spanish by the Book's Master Mix and Switch language learning system. It's not going to be a kind of chaotic or random way. There's an organized, systematic way for taking the language from a children's book and loading it into your vocabulary. The first stage in that is the master stage. And as it looks like, you just read the book. You spend time with your language learners and you read the book in English. You build a really strong, solid foundation. You get comfortable with the words. That means reading it more than one time if you so choose. And that's a really good thing, to get comfortable with it and talk about different things in English the first time, the second time, the third time, as many times as it takes for you to feel like you've mastered it. And mastering also sometimes means playing games with it, talking about the language, maybe doing some art projects around the language and crafts around the language. So today I'm going to show you one of the activities that you could do around this book. So in a few minutes, I'll slide down and show you our concentration cards. But our concentration cards kind of look like this. And they're images that look similar to the images in the book to teach you the vocabulary. Was this one of the words that you said you knew how to say in Spanish? I hope so. But before you even get to that, you play a good game of concentration and you put down the one for bird and the one for wolf and flower. And, I see both of them for water. I'm going to mix it up. And do you have to put all 15 words down, which would mean 30 cards? Do you have to do that all at once? No, por supuesto, no. You could do 6 sets of words or 8 sets of words. It depends on what you and your learners like to do. And you're just saying, water and water. And you're getting comfortable with the vocabulary so that while you're in the master phase, you're sure that you know those words. You talk about how much water there is in the ocean. You talk about drinking water every day. It's important. And you just get really comfortable with the vocabulary. What else do we have? Flower. I think flower is around here somewhere, but I can't find it right now. But they don't match. Flower, bird. Son diferentes. And so we put them back because that's how the concentration game goes. And I have sun and wolf. They say, the wolf is gray, and where do wolves live? And you talk about the words in the master phase so that when you get to the next phase, you are comfortable talking about what you see happening in a book. It's no big deal. It's something that you've done with your learners many, many times. What's the next phase? Mix. So You know the story, you know the vocabulary, you're comfortable with it. Now it's time to mix. And in this stage, we do something that in language learning worlds, they call it code switching, where sometimes if you're not sure of a word in one language, you can pull a word from a language where you are more comfortable and put that in. Or if you're trying to express a concept in another language, sometimes a word, they switch back and forth. And some people feel uncomfortable about that. But that is something that I see very intelligent adults doing. I see people doing in families. I see people communicating at high levels, and they do that, mixing back and forth when they're in the process of working something out. And that's the process we're going to use for building another layer of learning. So what would mix look like? Let's say you're reading the page that says, I love you, bird. And you know this page, you've spent time on it. Maybe this time when you're reading, you could say, I love you, pájaro. I love you, pájaro. You say, pájaro, and point that out to your listeners. Maybe you say, I love you, flower, but you take out the flower. And this time you say, I love you, floor. Floor. How do we say flower? Floor. And you just read through the whole book. I love you this, I love you that. And maybe you mix in the Spanish words. Or you want to do it diferente. Maybe you want to start with mixing in, and I might do this, mixing in that one phrase that repeats page after page after page. What's that phrase? Te amo, water. Instead of saying, I love you, water, you say, te amo, water. What else could you say? Te amo, sol. Oh my goodness, I'm jumping ahead. I love you, sun could be te amo, sun. And it's so fun to jump ahead because we know what's coming. We know the word for soul. We know what's coming. Te amo, sun. And you're just getting comfortable with that te amo, te amo, te amo. The te meaning you and amo meaning I love. Who do I love? Te amo. I love you. Okay, so that's what that might look like. I've included some resources that might help you to play games with the vocabulary. So on the Te Amo storyboard, you could say Te Amo and bring up some of your vocabulary. Te amo, viento. Maybe you want to just stick in your mix. Te amo, bird. Te amo, moon. Te amo, water. And you can eventually say, I love you, agua. I love you, pays. And you can go back and forth using these resources to remind you. And you put that phrase up somewhere or you play games with it. It'll be so fun. You could do that with all 15 vocabulary words. Te amo, sun, or te amo, sol. Lots of different things you could do. So that's what the concentration cards look like. You could play concentration, you could play find it, you could describe it. All of these resources are going to be part of our resources packet. And during our membership community time, I'm going to talk you through these and explain them. There's a bookmark, there's a learning board, there's concentration cards, there's vocabulary cards so you can see the cards in context. There's color words cards, there's things for numbers, mucho información. Okay, so our first phase was master, our second phase was mix, and I want to do more mix because mixing can be exciting, and it's almost as if mixing is going to switch and fall right over into the next phase. So if I go back and forth, because remember, this is a little book with a little phrase, and it only has one phrase. So it's a natural book to explain how you go from master to mix to switch, because it's going to be so quick to switch. I don't even realize sometimes I'm saying the whole phrase in Spanish, and you won't realize it either. Es muy rápido. So what's more mix look like? Maybe you could say, oh, well, I know these words. I know to say, I love you, sun. I love you, moon. Te amo, sol. Te amo, luna. Maybe we could talk about the sun and the moon and describe them by their colors. So I give you resources that remind you of all the color words. And could you say, El lobo es gris? Is that complicated? Mm-mm. The wolf is gray. Could you say the wolf es gris if you're comfortable? But I think it could come out really easy. El lobo es gris. Mm-hmm. So you can mix by putting in and spotting what you see. You're looking at the page and you say, gris, verde, amarillo, talking about the sun and the different things. So you're expanding on what you see. And so when I look at these figures, I can look and see my pájaro and say, el pájaro es azul. Or I look at the conejo, the bunny, and I say, te amo, conejo. I love the bunny. I love you, bunny. El conejo es marrón. So you're expanding, you're having a conversation about what you see in the book, not just reading the book. And maybe some other place where you see something that's marrón. You could say later on, because there's a tree in there, el árbol es marrón. Maybe you talk about the green part of the tree. El árbol es verde y marrón, green and brown. And so while you're out having a conversation, walking in the streets, and you see things, flores, mariquitas, which is ladybugs, things on our earth, you begin to describe them by color and say how much you love them. Could we talk about how large or how small something is by using these two simple words, grande, pequeño? Muy bien. What could we say? I'm going to get my next thing. La flor. La flor es pequeña. The flower is small, lots of small flowers. La flor es pequeña. That is not in the book, but you got the word flor from there. You got comfortable with that. And as you talk about the flor that you see in the book, you can say it's small, or maybe you want to say it's big. Notice I said this time it's pequeña and not pequeño, because flor is one of those feminine words, la flor. And so I'll say pequeña because the la and it ends in a, but don't worry about that. Those things will come. It's just a little grammar freebie for you. So you could describe the color, you could describe the size. What else could you say? You could spot things and say, hay un flor. There is a flower. You see the word hay, like there's hay in the barn, but I means there is something or there are something. So what else could I find? What else could I find? Hay viento. There is wind. You might also say hace viento. Hay un lobo. Maybe you're at el parque zoológico. You're at the zoo and you see un lobo and you can say hay un lobo. Maybe when you see the flowers, hay flores. Maybe when you see the trees, hay árboles. And so you're expanding the vocabulary that you found in the teeny, teeny book to be able to say more and more about what you see. And of course, if you can see one pájaro, you could say, hay dos pájaros. Maybe you want to use this question word that I'm going to give you as a support. ¿Cuántos? Every time I say cuántos, I go like this because cuántos has to answer with a number. ¿Cuántos pájaros hay? How many birds are there? In the book, you could say, un pájaro. Hay un pájaro. Maybe outside, hay tres pájaros. But you're expanding. You got that pájaro word down pat. And so now you expand on it by doing numbers and colors and talking about where you see things. It's wonderful, wonderful. I know I said we were going to wait for the switch phase, but did you see it happen? I already switched. I said, te amo sol. El sol es amarillo. All of those support ideas and information and suggestions, because you don't have to do any of them. You don't have to do them on my pace. You do them on your pace, at your learner's pace. But all of those suggestions are leading you up to be able to be in the switch phase where you see, you can say, yo hablo español. I'm speaking Spanish. The book is your support. It's like your springboard for where your Spanish has come from. The shared language experience of reading a book is more valuable than taking a class. You are sitting together and experiencing that. And now that vocabulary is part of your community's learning vocabulary, speaking vocabulary, and you know how to expand on it by using the numbers, the colors, saying how many there are, saying if something is big or small, grande or pequeño. So when you're in that switch phase, you're able to say so many things. Let's talk about what else we have in the switch phase. So If you follow the patterns that I give you, and it's all printed out for you, you can follow the patterns here so that you don't have to remember everything I'm saying here. The support materials are completely independent, but you can use the support materials to remind you of how to say El pez es azul, or if there's more than one tree, los árboles son verdes, or la tierra, the earth, es muy grande. Now you're describing things from this teeny, teeny little book. You're able to say so many different things by just checking in the resources. The other thing that I wanted to share with you is te amo is a wonderful phrase. It means I love you. Te amo, I love you. But there's more than one way to say I love you. Te quiero also means I love you. It's a more relaxed and informal way of saying I love you. It's like you could say te quiero mami, I love you mommy, or you say te quiero mi amor, I love you my love, my little sweet one, or whatever. It's very relaxed. There's some resources there to give you those options for how you could use that, just give you an understanding of it. And you'll also hear that quiero has a different meaning. So check out the resources to understand how quiero is used in a different way. Okay, let's go over the steps again. If you're going to invest in the time to join our membership community, you're going to get to be with other people who are going through the same books. They're sharing their successes. They're sharing the things they have questions about. They're showing their work as they go. And you have community around you so that you have other people you can see are making progress. And as you go, month by month, book by book, this month or this project showing you is with a little book. Some books are a little more, they're different projects, different topics, subjects, different things like that. You're going to start in the master phase where you read the book in English, get comfortable with it, do activities, paint pictures, do crafts, point things out as you come and go in your world. And then in the mixed stage, in a very orderly way, you decide ahead of time, just a few minutes before your reading time, you decide, maybe use a sticky note, maybe keep a notebook. What words am I going to mix in at this reading? Am I going to say the te amo phrase in Spanish the whole time through? Am I going to say I love you and say the English words? You have choices and you have options. And as you're in the mixed phase, can you begin to expand and talk about the colors that you see, whether that object is grande and pequeño, how many there are? Can you talk about the vocabulary when you're outside of your reading time? Talk outside the book, do activities and play games? Sure, you can. You're going to use all the informations here. And then as you build more and more books in your Spanish by the Book library, you'll see the connections with other books that will help you to understand the way language works and see patterns in different things. And before you know it, you will be doing a wonderful, wonderful job. I've given you a resource to listen to the book in Spanish and listen to it in English. That's not the time that you spend with your listeners. This is read aloud time. It's intended to build verbal communication and listening skills, but it is there to support you if you need it. And soon we'll be exploring all these other books in our Spanish by the Book library. I hope you'll join us for that great adventure. If you have questions or you'd like to receive this free resource, the teaching guide for Te Amo Sol, Te Amo Luna, please send me an email to SpanishByTheBook@gmail.com. Ciao.